Have you wondered what it'd be like to have made millions before you're 30? Our next guest has done just that. Having started at the ripe young age of just 20 years old and doing his first deal nearly a year later, he has since scaled into a $1.1 million per year business specializing in direct mail, niche lists, and implementing the basic fundamentals of real estate investing.
Calling all real estate investors. Are you ready to get off the real estate income roller coaster and learn the proven lead generation strategies the experts are using to consistently generate profitable real estate deals? Then you're in the right place. This is More Leads, More Deals, More Profits with your host, Mark Lane. Let's get started.
All right, welcome back, listeners. I've got a great guest on the show today by name of Greg Helbeck, and he's going to be going deep into direct mail, talking everything direct mail and talking some different list separation, some really, really important stuff. He's got a pretty fantastic story, a young guy that, in my opinion, is doing it right. He's got his business positioned extremely well. Been into it for a relatively short time. So I think this is going to be an incredible episode, especially for some of the younger people out there that are trying to figure out how to do it. How do I get started? And how do I, kind of like get past the learning curve as quickly as possible? This can be a great episode for you guys. So listen up. Greg, thanks so much for being on the show.
Hey, my pleasure, Mark. I'm glad we got to connect. I just got done basically reading your book. So it was a great piece of content you put out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. All right. So Greg, so you're 29 years old. We just kind of talked a little bit about your stats, and they're pretty darn impressive. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about how you got your start? Sounds like you started about 20. How you got your start? What led you into real estate or being an entrepreneur at such a young age, and how it led you to where you're at now?
Absolutely. So long story short, I got started in 2015 when I was 20 years old, and I was going to community college, living with my parents in the Hudson Valley area of New York, which is like the suburbs of Manhattan. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to make money. And I thought the original way of doing that was going to be playing professional hockey. And that didn't work out. Didn't make the NHL. Surprise, surprise. So I had to go back to school, and, I was going to community college, and all my friends were like away at 4-year school. So I kind of felt like, an underachiever. But I knew that if I was smart during that time frame, or like that period of my life, and I made the right choices, I could set myself up to have a lot of success in the future. So I was learning about stocks and all this stuff, going to college, taking business classes, and ended up getting my college degree, locally without going away and getting in debt, which is super important nowadays. But anyway, I ran into a real estate seminar in town, back when those big circus seminars were touring the country. They came to my area and they made, a free event, went there. They talked about wholesaling. I heard of wholesaling. I knew what it was, but they really kind of planted the idea in my mind that you can do it with no money, which is something I had a hard time believing. So me and my friend ended up partnering up together and going to the next level seminar, which was $2,000. So it was $1,000 each, which is half the money I had at the time. It sounds like a rags to riches story. Yeah. Anyway, we go to the next seminar, and they basically gave us a blueprint on what to do. And after that, I knew that I had enough information to start doing something about it. So I literally started going out, putting out Craigslist ads, and we were getting leads that way. By the way, mind you, this was way different market than where we're in now. So a lot of the stuff that I'm going to tell you does not work as well today than it did back 10 years ago.
I'm going to stop you for real quick there. So what do you think allowed you to take action? Whereas I would say the far majority of people, they have obstacles. They have things in their life to where they'll have a reason not to. What do you feel like it was that made you just say, I'm jumping right in? Tell us why that was, why that happened.
I knew that it was going to work. I had a belief in my head that I knew this was going to work because I knew other people were doing it and making money. Yeah. I just didn't know when it was going to work for me. So I knew that eventually it was all going to work out in the long game. Okay. But I knew in the short game, it was going to be a bumpy ride to get there. And I didn't know when I was going to have my lucky break, when I was going to start actually doing deals, because the timeline of starting and making $1 was basically a year. So I essentially paid to work for a year because I had to spend a little bit of money on marketing. But I always knew that this was going to work. And I knew I was going to be successful at it because prior to doing this, I would read like mindset books. I learned a lot from playing hockey at a pretty competitive level. So I kind of knew I could set anything in my mind. I could set anything I wanted to do that, I believed in. And my parents also raised me pretty well. Like they kind of let me do my own thing. Like they wouldn't let me quit things during the middle of a season, like in sports. And they never really like pushed me to do a specific thing, but they made me finish what I started. So I had pretty good principles instilled in me as a young kid. Grew up in a nice area, wasn't rich or anything like that, but like, I had enough, we had enough money to put food on the table. Yeah. But I was raised with a pretty good attitude, and I'm grateful for that. So I knew that business of buying houses was going to work, and I would consume so much information while I was taking action. Like example, putting out bandit signs. I'd listen to podcasts for 5 hours while I'm doing them. So I'm hearing all these other people making money across the country. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, all right, like this makes sense. Like if I do
it's like so much positive reinforcement that you're just like forcing into your mind.
Strict positive reinforcement. Like I went on like a diet of like just podcasts and books for like 3 years straight without listening to like a single song.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Good stuff. All right. So I guess like how long did it take you to do your first deal?
I mean, the first like real deal was a year, but the first like dollar I made was 9 months. And the difference between that was that the first dollar was from me helping out a mentor, which I can get into in a minute, helping him like change a lockbox out at a house that was down the street from where I lived. Yeah. And he paid me like $1,000. So I was like, oh man, I just made $1,000 basically doing nothing. And then my first wholesale deal was like 3 months after that, where I made $10,000 and split it with the guy 50-50. So 5. Okay.
So, figuring like, say that's kind of your first deal. Were you spending money on much other than like some bandit signs up till that point?
No, it was pretty much like a few $100 a month on bandit signs and my time. So I didn't
that's
really
that's still a long time to go without the first payday. And I always tell people the same thing, like expect 6 months. That's usually what I see. And that's oftentimes even with a mentor, it just takes like, you don't have the certainty, you don't have the belief, like you don't have 100% belief in yourself yet. You usually don't have the capital. Like sometimes you don't have the time. Like there's all these obstacles that it just takes time to get going. So anytime somebody says, oh, like do your first deal in 30 days, it's like, like a little bit of red flag goes off.
That's actually probably worse for somebody, because I wanted that to happen when I started. I was like, I hope I make money right away. But I actually, looking back now, been doing this for almost 10 years. Let's say I went out my first month and made $50,000. I would have such a like diluted perception of the business, because that's not how reality works.
Right.
So I think if I had a lot of money in the beginning, it probably would have hurt me rather than help me. So I'm glad I had to kind of like earn my way up there, because I had to learn all the lessons like personal development, persistence, consistency, pushing through like tough times. Like that was really in the short term painful, but in the long term, I really understood how to develop the skills to consistently make the money.
And it's like that goes along with the saying, people make money because they're successful. They're not successful because they have money. And like what you're talking about defines that perfectly. Like you started making money because you had the principles and the consistency and the character, all that kind of stuff in place. And therefore you became wealthy, right? You didn't have wealth first. So
no, exactly. Yeah. I had $2,000 in the bank.
Yep. All right. So $10,000 is your first deal. So kind of give us the, like how things evolved from where you're at then, $10,000 in your first deal up until like now, and you're doing 50 to 60 deals a year.
Yeah. So that's a journey and a half. So basically what ended up happening was I started doing deals in New York in like little dribbles. Like 1 month I'd do a deal, then I'd go a couple months without a house. Then the next, 3 months after I'd do another deal. It was very inconsistent. And I was like starting to think like, and I don't know if you're familiar with like the New York real estate market, but it's very, very, very hard with the attorneys and the seller's profile. Like it's just very challenging. So I was like making inconsistent income, like not enough money to really like say I had a business, but enough to be like, this kind of works. But I was like not doing it the right way. Like it was just super hard. And then eventually after I made some deals happen with the bandit signs, I would do a little bit of direct mail, mostly like printing out letters myself and stuff in the envelopes and whatnot, but that started to work too. But I was like running into all these issues with like attorneys wanting like $10,000, $15,000 down, and I didn't have a good buyer's list. And I was just getting frustrated with like how I had to jump through all these hoops in New York to like make these deals happen. So I had this grand idea where, and this was like, now we're going on like 2018-ish now. So I did that for a couple of years. And I said, I wonder if this would be easier in another market where I didn't have to deal with a lawyer. And I was like, that might make sense. And I said, if I'm right, then great. And if I'm wrong, then it's me. So I started virtually like doing deals in Dallas. Basically, I met somebody who I JV'd with for a long time down there, and we're still very good friends to this day. And I started basically saying, like, on these deals in New York that I did that were successful, what were some common traits that made these deals up? And they were like vacant properties that had delinquent taxes, and they most likely were inherited. So I basically reverse engineered a list in Dallas that met that criteria. And this, like I said, different time, different real estate years. They're like dog years. I started cold calling these people manually, like very targeted leads. This is not like calling anybody in one zip code. And I got a deal doing that within like 30 days. And I made 20,000. We split it 50-50. So I made 10. And then like a week later, I got another one where we made 30, split it 50-50, 15. And I didn't have to go to the property. I didn't have to meet the owner. I didn't sign the contract. I didn't deal with the buyers. I just got the lead and got the offer accepted over the phone and potentially DocuSigned it depending on the seller profile. And I was like flipping these houses with this other guy. And I was like, holy smokes, like this right. works. Like no one's doing this. It's not competitive. I don't have to ever go to these houses. And like literally, like I think I started that in like January of 2018. By like July, I was almost at like $200,000 worth of like income net to me, like after the JV split. Like it happened so fast. And then I was like, oh my God, I think I might have just discovered like this crazy, like, I don't even know, like what was I doing the whole time? How come I didn't do this when I started?
Yeah.
But I was learning all these skills the whole time. It's not like I just happened to run into that, you know?
Right.
But anyway, for a long time, that was my model. It was like virtually wholesaling in Dallas. Eventually moved to California because I had a lot of money at that time and I didn't have to go to any houses. So I was doing this for a couple years. And then eventually I started to realize, like, with that strategy, and I'm happy to unpack it in a minute, like what I was doing. But number one, it was dependent upon my time. Like I had to sit there and call and research the leads and all that, which, you know, isn't the worst thing in the world. But like there was only so many of those really distressed properties in any given area. Like most of the leads I found like were already in my CRM after, 6 months of doing that. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to eventually tap this well dry and I'm going to have to go into Houston and do this or do this, somewhere else. So at that point I had some money saved from all those houses. And I'm like, okay, now I can spend $5 or $6 grand a month in marketing without having to really worry about it. And I can probably do this back in New York because I have money for deposits now. I always kind of known that market well. So eventually started transitioning back into like a paid marketing model back in New York, still living in California. So I would go back and forth pretty often. But that's how I started to evolve my business to have it become more of like a direct response marketing operation, and how I built it up from there.
So do you still have to have those large deposits in
yes.
New York?
Oh yeah. Oh, New York has not changed. Yeah. It's just gotten harder, if anything. Yeah. You still have to put down, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 per contract in New York. Yeah. Non-refundable. So
I love that though, because it sounds like not the New York part, but the, kind of like your evolution, because it shows that, by being consistent, it's like, with any of us, when we have our eyes on opportunity, we're seeing like, we're picking up tiny little cues without like our subconscious says without us even realizing what's happening. And like you're picking up on, okay, like this seems to work. I'm getting a little bit higher pickup rate or whatever it might be. Like there's these little cues that are happening that are kind of like signaling us, okay, like go deeper, turn left, turn right type of thing. And eventually it just gets easier and easier. Like I did the exact same thing. I started in 2010 at that time. Of course, bottom of the recession, we were going super heavy on the MLS. MLS doesn't really exist now. Like you can't do a business off the MLS. But we did. And then we saw that dry up and we had to start shifting. And it sounds like kind of same thing. Like you saw something changing in the horizon and you kind of like, shifted back before you got wiped out.
Yes, exactly. And that's a big lesson for the listeners here is like this business is always evolving. Marketplaces, marketing, Like you got to like ride it when it's hot. And then if a channel or a strategy doesn't start working that well anymore, you have to be aware enough to pivot. Like I'll give you a good example, like to this current day. We've seen in our model with the direct mail business and some Google stuff, it's getting a lot harder to buy houses from direct mail. Like we're still making it profitable, but it's not like it used to be. And we're seeing like a lot of sellers aren't as motivated as they normally are. And the buyers we're selling them to, whether they're investor buyers or retail buyers, are a little bit more picky. So like what I was telling my acquisitions guy this morning is, hey, for the short period going forward, we're going to have to work twice as hard to make half as much. And we have to accept that because this is happening to everybody in our market. And a lot of people are going to drop out. So if we can just stick around here and keep doing what we need to do every day, we'll see past this. And we'll be, even more successful. But things evolve and change all the time. And you have to really be on top of that because this business changes so often. I mean, it's crazy.
When we started when I started marketing heavy, which was 2016, I think, maybe even 2017, we started directly into heavy direct mail. We're talking 25,000 pieces a month. And we went from, no marketing straight to 25,000 pieces a month. And we were picking up 8 to 10 deals a month. We were pulling in about 150,000 a month. We're spending eight to 8,500, making back 150. So amazing. Our ROI was like 1,200 to 1,500% consistently for about almost like at least a full year straight, maybe 2 years. And then we saw it start to take a little bit of nosedive and start to slow down. Yep. And now, 2024. We're sending the same amount of direct mail, spending a little bit more because it's gone up a little bit. And now we're averaging 2 to 3 deals per month. So our profit per deal has gone up probably by close to 50%. So that's helped, but it's not even close to as profitable as it once was. It's like we always have to be tracking all those different things and like keeping our eyes on and trying different things out. Cause it's like, I like direct mail. I think it's a staple in the business. But if we were to rely on that and that only, our business would not be doing all that great right now.
Yeah, it would be more lumpy because it's just one channel versus like if you have 3 or 4 different channels going on. Yeah. 1 month will make up for the other month if they're not performing well. But you hit it on the head, man. Like a lot of people, like once you get past like I need to make money in real estate, and then you're a consistent like deal maker, I would say. I mean, you might not be a business owner at that point if you're in that phase. You got to start to really understand how it works with like trends and cycles and like you said, marketing. Like I'll give you a great example. Text message marketing. Oh my goodness. Like 5 years ago, or not 5, but 4 years ago, it was like the best thing I've ever seen, and then now we don't even do it anymore because it doesn't work and it's basically illegal. So that was cool for a couple of years. But like if you had a whole business dependent upon texting, you're probably either out of business or you have to restart the entire marketing, machine up again with a different channel.
Yeah. Okay. So Greg, what are you doing now? What lead generation strategies are you using to consistently have deal flow?
So the 2 paid ones that I know very well that I've been doing for a while are direct mail and then just online Google search, not necessarily SEO. I have my opinion on that, which I can get into. Not a great opinion on it. But the pay-per-click has been consistent because you're pretty much in control of your spend and the clicks. And if you know what you're doing, you can have that be somewhat predictable. And then, like you said, direct mail, even though it has gotten tougher, it still will pull a good ROI if you know what you're doing and you're consistent with it because it's just math at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah. We've actually, so we started back in PPC what was that like? Or beginning of this year, and it's outperforming our direct mail now by a considerable amount.
Is it really? And you're just doing it in Des Moines, right?
Yeah. Our May brought in a 1,900% ROI. So,
on PPC?
Yeah. Phenomenal.
Wow.
That's awesome. Spent 6,300 and it brought in about 130 something.
That's really good. Are you managing it yourself or you have a company?
No, I can barely use email myself. So no, definitely not. I'm happy to connect you with the guy that does that for me. So let's break down the direct mail. I know it sounds like that's kind of your favorite lead generation strategy. And I would say it's been ours as well. It's been a staple in our business for, as long as I can remember. tell us what like how you use direct mail, how you feel like it's a big piece of your business, why you like the consistency of it. Just break it all down for us.
Absolutely. So I'll start at the top and then I'll break it down. So the reason I really love it is because you can reverse engineer it down to a science practically. And at the same time, you can manage it without having to be that smart, because I'm not a genius with the tech or anything like that. But like you can basically say like, all right, I'm going to send these many mailers out. This is exactly what I'm sending. These are what I expect to happen. And then I'm going to get the results. And then I'm going to line those up with my expectations and see where I might have been off. And then the next time I mail them, I can make a change and see if that change obviously brings me a better result. So it's just, at least for me, it's very easy to manage from like, does this work and does this not work? Because it's so trackable. Every list has a different phone number. Every drop we do has a picture of the postcard or letter we're sending, so we know what's going to perform. And you can really reverse engineer it, and you can scale it up and scale it down as much as you really want. Like you could send 30,000 postcards, or you could send 3,000 postcards. Like it's very interchangeable. And the other thing I love about it is you can target either what houses you want or what distress you want. Because the thing with PPC that I don't like is that sometimes you get leads in the middle of nowhere that you don't want to buy because they just happen to be in your area, like a trailer in a park, for example. Like I don't really, unless they're in Seattle.
We have somebody that's, we've had it where the person's in town, but they have the house that they want to sell. It's like, several hours away or in a different state.
Exactly.
So it's like, like that costs us money, but there's nothing we'll do with that house.
There's nothing, or wholesalers coming through or whatever. So for those reasons, I like mail. In terms of what I do, at least to this day, because it used to be like send 2,000 postcards and get 2 deals. And I wish those were still the days, but that's far gone for now. I like to do the niche mailings at this point, and I'll tell you exactly who I'm mailing and where I'm getting it from because I like to be an open book. Probate, pre-probate, tax delinquent, and then the other list I love mailing is, and the Audanic list. I'm sure you heard of them. And then also the DataFlick predictive data list. They're getting pretty popular now. So like either predictive, tax delinquent, probate, pre-probate, essentially that's inherited properties. And then the other list that people sleep on that I'm surprised more people aren't mailing these people. It's basically, I call it like the absentee owner on steroids list, which is basically this. And I like to get it on ListSource too, because on PropStream, I just don't know if the data is as accurate. But you pull a list of, in a big city, this works much better because like in a smaller area, like there's not that many of these people. You pull an absentee owner list on ListSource, but you just filter with unknown equity only, and they've owned the property for 10 plus years. So essentially, they're like properties that have been owned forever, where the owners don't live there. They're either vacant or they have like a terrible renter in there. And we've just gotten so many good deals from that list. Like I got an appointment I was supposed to go on today where the lady had to reschedule, but it was from that unknown equity absentee list out here in Washington. And it's been vacant for 12 years.
Unknown equity.
So it's like, you know what I mean? And she's an absentee owner. So in my area, you can pull a pretty big sample of those people, but we're mailing those core lists. We're getting our data from DataFlick, ListSource, Leadvine.com is where we're getting the pre-probate, probate, and tax delinquent. And we're mailing the campaign once a month. And what we're doing from a mail piece standpoint, and the cost to do all that's about $15,000 with all the records we have and whatnot. We're mailing postcards for the most part. But what I'll do is if I have a postcard I mail and it works, I keep mailing it until it doesn't work. But then if I mail a postcard and it doesn't work as well as I thought, I will change the postcard the next time I mail them. And then I'm just going to pretty much figure out which one is going to resonate with the right audience. Like, for example, in Seattle, and I'm doing some stuff here in Seattle now that I live here, I was mailing the check postcard, which is like basically has an offer on it for them. That got a lot of calls, but the quality wasn't great. Versus like in New York, like we're just sending more of like a branded thing because we have like a pretty good reputation over there and we've been around for a while. That seems to resonate more over there because people can look us up. We're local and this, that, and the other. So you got to always be testing and tracking because go ahead.
I also think that stuff like the check card is like, it's kind of a gimmick. So it works. It'll work for the first drop or 2 or maybe 3, but then after that, it's going to die off a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, I was just telling the guy today on the phone, the vendor, I said, yeah, this was cool, but if I mail these people an offer every month, that is going to get diluted really fast because there's just, it only works for so long, you know?
So I think you answered the question, but I was going to ask how often you change your pieces. Like, you know, I used to try different pieces all the time, just like, oh, like what will this piece bring? And then we kind of settled on one, like you said, that's a little bit more branded, shows us as the actual individuals, you know, me and my daughters. It shows us being local. So like, I like that. We've got good feedback from that. So I've just kind of stayed with it, as the main thing we mail. But I want to hear from you. Like, how often do you change up your pieces?
So if I have a piece that's working, I won't change it until my stats start to tank for some reason. But
Is
like, for example,
is there a limit or a minimum of like once it goes below a certain point where you pull the plug on it?
So what I do with mailings is basically this, like I'll have a campaign, which is like the high level, you know, like this is the marketing campaign we're going to do for a year, right? With these lists and all this stuff. And then inside the campaign, there's like different cycles. So like every time I mail somebody, that's like cycle number 1. And then the next time I mail them, it's cycle number 2. So like for campaign cycle number 1, I'll use like a doodle postcard, for example. I'm just making this up. Doodle postcard. If that doodle postcard converts well and we get a good net lead rate out of that, because I really look for like the net leads per the mailings, I'm going to keep mailing that until maybe cycle 4, I keep doing that. And then all of a sudden that drops off. So that means that message is kind of like gotten stale. So then for like cycle 5, I'll do like a branded postcard and I'll test that. And then I'll kind of like see, okay, that pulled in some better calls at that point. People are probably liking the new message, same person, but new message. So I really just look at it based on the stats. And like if something like back in the day, that doodle postcard that I was telling you, we would send that once a month and it would get deals every single month like clockwork. It was just like, it just worked. And I hated the mail piece. It looked terrible, but people would call it, it would get their attention, and, you know, we would buy houses from it. So I only will change the mail piece when the calls start to dry up, because I know that they're probably getting, you know, kind of, they're like almost ignoring the message at that point because they keep getting it.
Yeah. And so for just to pause for a second. So for the listeners, you know, what Greg's really talking about is tracking, you know, tracking all of your KPIs, your metrics, you know, because without tracking, there's no way to be able to make decisions. You don't have any data to make decisions by.
Exactly.
So when you like, you know, when you have certain data, you can use that and say, okay, like, you know, either one, we're not getting enough leads, something's wrong. Like, let's try a different piece. We have tons of leads, but we're getting tons of like, do not call again, or take me off your list type of response. So that could be like, okay, well, that brought a lot of leads, but now we lost a big chunk of our list because that postcard ticked people off for whatever reason. Exactly. Like the Google postcard, we used to use that one. That's the
result
did not
perform well for me. People hate that.
Yeah, that's the result we'd always have on that. So we quit using it. Always great for like getting a lot of calls coming in. So if we're dry or something like that, we might want to use that one. But as soon as we do, it's like, then we get a big rush of people saying, hey, take me off your list.
You get that influx of take me off your list. I call it like take me off your list Tuesday, you know, like the mail hits on like a Monday and then they start calling in on Tuesday. And that's another thing with mail. Like I said, you and I are that's why I loved your book. You talked a lot about mail. Like, if you really think about direct mail, because I used to like over track, I would say, like way too many metrics that like really weren't meaningful. The only thing that I care about with mail is what's my ROI, right? On that campaign. Same. Am I getting 3 to 4 to 1 or not? Like that's the real thing I'm looking for. I used to be like, oh, my cost per lead is this. Like my cost per lead doesn't really matter, because if I'm spending, you know, 15 grand a month and we're bringing in 3 to 4x that just from mail, I can keep that channel around. But I'll give you a great example. In Reno, where I used to live, I spent 40 grand in marketing and I made 80,000 back on mail. Terrible. Like $20,000 cost to deal. And like the deal sizes were high, 40 grand each, but it was atrocious. So I was like, I'm cutting this out. No way. But it's like, because I track all that, I know, but people like are scared to spend money on mail because they don't track and they don't have the belief. Yeah. Because they're like, I don't know if it's going to work. Well,
exactly what I like to say is like, it's going to feel like gambling. It's going to feel like gambling until you have enough history, enough experience, and enough certainty there to where, you know, like you and I, without question, I look at my marketing as that's an investment. In fact, it's the very best investment I have of all my investments. Like, you know, direct mail's paying me on average 300 to 1,000% ROI per month. Like my rentals certainly don't pay me anywhere close to that.
I wish.
The PPC right now is 300. Last month was like almost 2,000. Outrageous. So marketing is the best ROI we can get out of anything we can do. So once you have the experience and the certainty behind it, we start to look at that as an investment, not a like, I hope this works type of thing. So,
oh yeah, 100%. It's interesting you say that, because I remember like when I first started mailing, I would get a little reluctant, and then eventually I just got used to it.
Yeah.
But now, like, last week I spent 15K for the mailers this month.
Yeah.
And I don't even think twice about it. Not because I'm some big baller, but I'm just like, this is
part of your operations. Yeah, it just becomes part of your operations.
This is going to get me deals. So like people got to change, and it takes a long time to get over that fear. I'm not saying that happens overnight, because I remember I used to be sweating bullets. Even when I had some money, I was like, oh, am I throwing this away? But like,
did you ever make any big mistakes? Such as, like, for example, I had, thankfully it was years ago when I didn't do as much direct mail as I do now, but I put the wrong number on the piece.
Oh yeah.
And so we had, I think it was like 11,000 pieces went out, and I was like, I didn't have any calls coming in that week. I'm like, what is going on? Like, and so next thing I know, somebody thankfully, looked me up. Like, she went through the work to look me up and says, hey, like, I tried calling this number, but some guy answered and it wasn't you. And so I'm like, oh shoot. So I end up calling the number that we put on our piece. And sure enough, this guy was just getting bombarded with all these calls, and he thought like we were pulling some type of prank on him. And I'm like, oh dude, I was like, dude, I'll pay you if you can like send them my way. So it's funny, but yeah, there's definitely those mishaps that happen.
I put the wrong number on postcards before. That was only once. That was a small list back when I got started. That was painful. Yeah. Especially because like in the beginning, like you got all the resources you have, like they got to count. You can't really there's no room for error. But I remember one time, this was actually during COVID, I thought I was like a slick copywriter because I had nothing to do but like read marketing books all day. Right. So I wrote like this Dan Kennedy, like crazy ass postcard, like reverse psychology. And I'm like, oh, this is going to crush it. And like, I think I spent $7,000 or something on a campaign, got one phone call. She was like, what are you doing?
Keep it simple.
I was like, I thought I was so smart. Clearly that wasn't the case. So yeah, you got to just do what works. Like those mail houses like have templates on there because they work, or else they wouldn't be selling them.
Exactly.
So people get all caught over the mail piece. It's like, I think the list is way more important. Like you got to have a decent mail piece. Like you can't be like sending them a piece of toilet paper. But like if you have a good list and the message is reasonable, like you're going to get an ROI.
And I'll back that. So my story with my very first big mailing I ever did, we literally did, it was I wrote on an 8x11 piece of paper with a black Sharpie, we buy houses as is, any condition, all cash, something like that. So it literally looked like just handwritten black ink. Like there wasn't more than a dozen words on there. And that brought in, I think it was a limited amount of calls, like 13 calls, but we got 9 deals out of that and produced over $100,000. It was the very first mailing I ever did. I just didn't know what I was doing. So it was like, okay, I got to execute simplicity, like get it done, get it out. And probably one of the best performers we ever did. So, but that's because it wasn't because the mail piece was great. Like it was simple. So it like, obviously it resonated with people it needed to resonate with, but more importantly, it was in front of the right people. It was in front of a good list. So it's the old saying, you can't say the wrong thing to the right people, and you can't say the right thing to the wrong people. So if you have 100%. A good list and a decent piece, you're going to perform.
Exactly. And the thing I love about mail too, that gets me, like, doesn't make me afraid to spend money on it, is it's all timing. Like you can mail the same list 8 times, and then the 9th time you mail them, their tenant doesn't pay rent and they've gotten 8 messages from me. Like there's deals we've bought where like the lady had the postcard for 3 years. And she calls and she's like, hey, I just filled out a contract with this other knucklehead investor. Can you just come over and buy this house real quick? I'm ready to sell it. And that was from a spend from 2 years before. So it's like, it like pays little dividends. Those are actually the best leads when they call from like a year or two earlier. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe you didn't throw this out. So I think that's the best channel for those reasons.
And it's funny because there's, the times where people will save a postcard and like, so we always have ours, categorized by like month and year and stuff like that. And so we'll get these calls by these postcards that were sent like 2 years ago. And it's like they, for whatever reason, decide to hold on to that piece, stick it on the refrigerator, or tuck it in their drawer. And next thing you know, we're getting a check from something we sent 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's
so
amazing.
It's there's not many marketing methods that will provide that type of opportunity. Most of them are deals. Like, what's that?
I call those free deals because you spent that money so long ago, it doesn't even matter anymore. So when you get that call that comes in 2 years later, I call that a free lead.
Yeah.
It's a little mindset thing. I'm like, oh, it's a free deal. Spent that money in 2023 or 2022.
Yeah. So we're going to start wrapping this up, but what would you say for, people that are getting started, maybe having a little bit of experience, but not having that consistency, and they're maybe kind of on the income roller coaster? What kind of type of advice would you have for them?
That's a great question. And I've been there before. So I would tell them that obviously, the business works, hence you've made some deals happen. But you're probably not really at that point, if that's your like current problem, you're probably not great at running a basic system for yourself to follow. So like you're doing stuff, you're taking action, but you're not tracking and systematizing stuff like you should be. And you don't need a team to do this either. That's the thing. People think you need a team to run a system. You could run a system yourself, and then that just makes less thinking have to happen. So they're probably not tracking their offers. They're probably not making enough offers and tracking. And they're probably not being strategic with their lead generation, which means like they're just spending some money and then they're getting some deals, and then they're just like maybe going on vacation and then deciding to spend some money a couple weeks after. So like they're not tracking it and running it like a system. So I would tell them that if you want like a guaranteed deal a month or 2 deals a month, you need to be guaranteeing making 30 offers a month minimum, if not 40, because it's a little harder now with the way the market is. So your conversion rate might be a little lower than it usually is, just with where sellers are at. So if you can make, 2 to 3 offers a day and track that, you're retroactively, like it's going to take time, but like over like 2 or 3 months of that, you're going to have more deals than you probably thought, because those offers are going to compound and people are going to call you back and say, hey, is that offer still good? And you're going to get the deals that come in right away. So I think that person who's on the income roller coaster has to really be disciplined with how many leads are they getting on a daily basis? How many offers are they making? And let's say they make 50 offers and don't get something accepted. If you have that data tracked, you can go back and say like, oh, wow, I made 50 offers and I don't have a deal. Am I making my offers too low? Am I marketing to the wrong crowd? Like you have, like you said earlier, you have data to go off of. So it's a relatively easy problem to fix if you already have some success, because the business works. You don't have to get into like mindset issues or anything like that. But like I have a little small coaching group, and a lot of the advice that I give is like, your marketing is not targeted enough. Your systems aren't dialed in. Your sales process could use some help. But it's really one of those 3 things. It's never like some crazy thing. It's like you're either not making enough offers, your marketing isn't target, like you're cold calling or something to like the wrong list, which that still works, cold calling, but we don't really do it anymore. But it's really like 3 things you can improve on that'll get you that consistency.
For listeners, for listeners, I would say that's like that advice you just gave is probably $20,000 to $40,000 a month worth of value. No joke. I mean, because it's really like when people have the issue of, well, I'm not getting enough deals. Well, chances are it almost always comes down to an offer situation. They're not making enough offers, and if they're not making enough offers, they're not getting enough leads to where they can make enough offers. So it's almost one of those two things. So identifying that, and then saying, okay, like I'm going to work this problem out, and I'm going to, reverse engineer it. I'm going to track it, and I'm going to get better in those 2 areas. Those 2 areas alone will significantly start to increase your business. And if nothing else, it'll at least take you off that income roller coaster and start giving you some stability. And then you can kind of start to reinvest.
I'm glad you said that, because I have had a lot of consults with people like, and it's always like comes down to like, if they're like, they don't have consistency, I'll say like, how many offers did you make last week? And the answer is either I don't know or like 2. Yeah. And I'm like, all right, you made 2 offers last week. Like that's not going to work.
Nope. Same thing. Yep. Right on key.
Crazy.
All right. So Greg, we're going to go into what's called our lightning lead round. Okay. So I'm going to fire off some questions to you. You just answer them back best you can. All right. So digital or traditional? Quick, pick your preferred lead generation medium.
Traditional, for sure.
Traditional. Favorite tool? What's the one lead gen tool you can't live or work without?
Oh, lead gen tool.
Yep.
CallRail.
There you go. Good one. Best book. Which book on marketing or sales do you think every real estate investor should read?
80/20 Sales and Marketing by Perry Marshall. And then
Good.
More Leads, More Deals, More Profits by Mark Lane.
Heard that's another good one.
Yeah, it's pretty good one.
Number one metric. What's the top metric you track in your lead generation campaigns?
Offers.
Okay. Quick win. What's one quick win our listeners can implement today for better lead generation?
Make sure every list you're mailing has a phone number dedicated to that list so you know what list is actually getting calls and you can cut the crap out if it's not performing.
Okay. Personal touch or automation? Which do you lean on more for lead gen?
Personal touch.
Most overrated trend. What lead generation is currently overhyped?
Probably SEO, which is crazy.
Okay. Underrated strategy. What lead generation strategy do you think deserves more attention?
Targeted cold calling.
Wow. Okay.
Targeted. I'm very clear with that. Like that's like, there's a way to do it, which I can get into if you want. It's totally up to you.
Yeah, I think your big deal came from that, right? Like the deal you did.
Which, exactly. It was like almost $500,000.
As we finish this, let's dig into that for just a couple minutes.
Yeah, I'm happy to share that.
All right, two more questions. One big no-no. What's one lead generation mistake to avoid at all costs?
Ooh. Don't give money to an SEO provider because it's probably a waste of time.
Okay. Future bet. What's the next big thing in lead generation?
Oh man, probably. I said I like traditional better, but I would say like YouTube ads and like connected TV stuff where you can target people who like are streaming shows on their digital.
Somebody else just mentioned that too. Like I don't know anything about it, so it's like that's two in a row that have mentioned that. So I'm gonna have to dig into that.
Yeah.
All right, so we just a couple minutes left. So tell us about that. I know you had like like $200,000 or $300,000 deal recently.
350.
Holy cow!
Net. That's crazy.
Tell us how that happened.
All right. So long story short, I took the tax delinquent list in San Diego when I used to live there, and I put it into my like data software called Envelo. It's just basically a list stacker CRM. And I saw that one of the leads was 15 grand delinquent in taxes, and it was vacant, and it was inherited because it said estate of seller. So I was like, looks like someone's neglecting this. And it was in Rancho Bernardo, which is like super nice area in San Diego, like 20 minutes from where I used to live. And I was like, I should probably call the heirs of this property because they're literally letting it rot. And I called the brother. He originally said he was going to give it back to the county for taxes. And like normally people don't say that in California because all the houses are like super expensive. And I said, a lot of them
are kind of handed down into the family, right?
Exactly. There's trusts and all that stuff. It's so expensive there. Thank God I moved out of there. Different story. But anyway, I was like, listen, I get it. I understand you're busy. And this guy was like a multimillionaire. Like this was not a knucklehead. Like this guy worked for the government, like super well off, lived in like the DC area. And I said, listen, Bob, I understand that's what you probably want to do. You don't want to be bothered with this thing. It's all the way across the country. If I can pay for the probate and make this as easy as I possibly can for you, would you be at least open to selling it? And he says, yes. So he talked to his sisters and he came back to me and said, Greg, if you can do the probate work and I have minimal involvement, I'll give you this thing for $275. And I thought it was a joke. I'm like, okay, that works. So we signed it up, took it through probate. I bought it with a private money. And I put 25K into it and sold it for $750 in a month and made 350 grand.
Amazing.
And the deal cost no money. It was free. There was no it was I called the guy I called him on an iPhone, on my personal phone. Yeah.
So I don't recall. Did you live there at the time, or how did you come across that lead or that opportunity?
I was living in San Diego and I was doing some marketing there, and we were mailing and stuff, but I found this one because he was getting postcards from me, but it was vacant and he wasn't calling. So I basically what I was doing is like out of like, let's say 5,000 records, about like 25 of them are going to be like vacant and distressed and inherited. Yeah. So like I know how to kind of look for those.
They're just ultra distressed.
I saw that it had like 3 years of back taxes.
Yeah.
And like usually at that point, like someone's pretty much like accepting that they're going to give it back to the county. And the thing is in San Diego, that doesn't happen a lot. Like if you're in like a crappy area, like the hood of Detroit or something, like that happens all day long. But in San Diego, that doesn't really happen because these houses are so valuable. Right. So it was like a unicorn. Yeah, it was a unicorn. But
That's amazing. I mean, that's like, we're talking, and I know for most people in most areas, that's not common. Like that is a unicorn. That is I'm sure especially with your age, there's no question that you'll get into other things. You'll have bigger profits in your lifetime. But for most people, like if I were to stay in single family in my market, I will probably never see a deal that big in my lifetime. So that's pretty incredible. So what'd you do with all the cash?
I did I put a lot of it in the bank. I got a tax bill coming that will be nice and big. Thank you, Gavin Newsom. But I also loaned some money out, hard money loan, actually 2 hard money loans. But I'm a big fan of actually saving money and having a lot of gunpowder to like buy more properties, whether I'm renting them or flipping them in cash. Yeah. So I did do 2 hard money loans with it that are currently out still on the street. But a lot of that money I just tucked away, and I'm using it to buy more projects now, and doing some more rentals. But
cash gives us confidence.
Cash is king, bro. People like always crap on cash. I'm like, dude, if you got a lot of liquidity, like you got peace of mind.
Yes, exactly. Liquidity and low expenses and debt, you're sitting in a very nice position.
Peace of mind, man. That's why we're in this business.
Greg, that was a fantastic interview. You added a mountain of advice and some good old golden nuggets for everybody. Where can they find you if they want to dig in more and learn more about you?
Yeah, for sure. They can check my YouTube channel out at just type in Greg Helbeck Real Estate Investing on YouTube, and my channel will come up. And we just hit the 500 subscriber mark, which is cool. And we're trying to grow that to 1,000 in the next couple months. So I put out 2 shows a week, whether it's me, myself, or interviewing other people. Yeah. So we're consistent with the content. So if they want to learn more about me and some information I can share, YouTube is the best way.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It was a pleasure, and I'm sure everybody will get a ton of value from it.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, you bet.
This episode is over, but we're not done here. For tons more actionable advice, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Ready to get help from Mark directly? Visit marklaneeducation.com to schedule a consultation and kickstart your lead generation strategies right away. We'll see you next time on More Leads, More Deals, More Profits with Mark Lane.